The world's best songwriters are coming to town for the Palm Coast Songwriters Festival. It is going to be April 28th to May 1st at the Daytona State College Amphitheater in Palm Coast. And these writers have written collectively hundreds of hit songs, many of which you'd recognize even if you're not a big country fan. My name is Brian McMillan, executive editor of the Palm Coast Observer, and I have with me today Kandi Lowe to talk all about it. Hello, Kandi. We can shake. We're all good. Kandi is a DJ with KIX Country 98.7, and she's interviewed many of the songwriters for her own show, which will air on KIX Country from 6 to 7 p.m. Sundays from March 20th to April 24th, which is the Sunday before the festival. And just last thing, you can get tickets to this festival in person at the DSC Amphitheater at palmcoastsongwritersfestival.com. So we got the plugs for the show out of the way.
Got it all in.
So can you tell me, since you've done these interviews, what are some of your favorite moments when you've done these interviews with the songwriters themselves?
Let's see. One of my first stories that I heard was from a man named Kent Blasey who discovered Garth Brooks. So it's the story about how Garth was just in town and was selling boots and wanted to do demos in his studio. So they sat down and wrote together and shopped the songs around, shopped Garth around. Nobody wanted Garth. The common theme was nobody wants Garth on the radio. Who wants to hear a guy named Garth? So after shopping it around for a year, he played it one night, this particular song, at the Bluebird Cafe. And someone from Capitol Records was there, and the rest, I guess they say, is history. Wow. So that became his first number one.
So Garth Brooks was selling boots. That sounds
he was selling boots.
Right on the money with that one.
Yeah, exactly.
What was that song, do you know?
If Tomorrow Never Comes.
Wow, that was his first one. And this guy, what's the name of the writer again?
Kent Blasey.
Okay.
Yeah, so Garth approached him and asked if he could, do some recordings in his studio for him. So he said sure, and then Garth was kind of like, I write a little bit. So he said, well, let me hear what you write. And then Kent was like, well, I won't give too much away. But yeah, Kent was like, here's how we need to change this. And then from there, they just started writing together and have since become good friends and occasionally perform together. And
wow. So, and Kent Blasey is one of the people coming to the Songwriters Festival.
Yes, and he's actually coming back. He's been here for a couple years, I believe, at this point, which is one of the cool things, too, with the songwriters, is that we started it the first year. We had, a handful of songwriters, and now it's just grown every year. A lot of them like to come back, and we love seeing them again, and, adding new faces every year as well. Yeah,
I've heard some of the same people a few different times, and I don't know. It's a really cool thing to see, these famous songs and people that you kind of learn how they came about. So, who else have you interviewed for your show?
Over the last few years, Brock Berryhill, he's another one. Paul Overstreet. We have Jeffrey Steele coming back, who has an incredibly long list of hits that he's written. And I'm still actively talking to them coming up in the next few weeks for the shows because, our songwriters are still writing songs. Their songs are still moving up the charts. You're still hearing them performed, by the celebrities at the different award shows. So it's an ongoing thing. It's not like one and done with them.
Yeah, occasionally I've heard at the festival somebody say, this is one that hasn't really been, picked up yet, but I like it, so here I'm going to play the song. And I remember hearing one of those songs on the radio, the next year or something.
Which is what's kind of cool about it too. Yeah. You almost feel like you are kind of like in a living room with these songwriters and they're just telling you their stories. So it's a different experience than when you hear it on the radio because you feel like some kind of personal connection because, I know where that song came from and I know the story behind it. And I think it's a little added extra excitement to it.
Yeah. So there's another song you mentioned when you're prepping for this. Mm-hmm. You think my tractor's sexy. Do you remember the story behind that one?
You think my tractor's sexy? Yes. He was telling me originally that trying to remember which one it was now. I'll have to go back and look. I think it was Paul Overstreet. Anyway, he was with his wife and they were in the feed store. And she was kind of a little bit all over him in the feed store. And he's kind of like, what is your deal? We're at the tractor store. And so she kind of gave him, as he put it, that little look or whatever. So as soon as he walked out of there, he started singing, "Oh, she thinks my tractor's sexy." And it just he started singing it to her in the kitchen. And it just became something that everyone else loved. And he would sing it to his friends as a joke, and they all thought it was great. So it just kind of evolved from there into becoming a big song.
Yeah, it seems like that's a common theme, is like some of the songs, at least they sound like they were they turned into songs by accident almost. It's like there was like a funny thing that happened, and so it just evolved.
Well, that's one of the things I found really cool about the songwriters too, is that a lot of them will literally just walk around with their phones or, voice memo or something like that. And if something comes across their mind, whether it's just a phrase, maybe they'll start there and just, mention that into their phone. And then later on, when they're trying to come up with something to write, when they're with some of these big stars, they'll pull out some of this material, and some of it clicks right away. And some of it will take literally years to click, but eventually it does.
Yeah. Very good. So what about you? What is it like to be a DJ? Do people ever, hear your voice in a grocery store and say, hey, that's Kandi Lowe? Anything
Not
like
necessarily
that?
in a grocery store. It has happened in drive-thrus.
Really?
Yeah, when they just hear the voice.
That's funny.
Yeah, so, which there's been times, especially in my younger years, you'll pull up and they'll be like, are you? And yeah, that's me, kind of thing. But then it turns out really well, because when you get to the drive-through window, then they're like, well, I got something extra special for you. Thanks. So in that aspect, it's fun.
Yeah, very good. Do you like the music you play? I mean, are you secretly like a rap fan and you didn't just play country songs?
I don't think anyone likes any one particular music. I think pretty much everyone likes a whole range of it. For me, country is always going to be part of, I guess, like my heritage. I grew up in East Tennessee and traveled. My dad was in the military, but that's always been where we went back to. So all of the music that I heard with my cousins at Christmas and, all of that was country. So I think it just has kind of ingrained in my DNA a little bit.
So if you're not listening, when you're done on the radio, being on the radio as a DJ, are you listening to country music in your spare time? Or what do you listen to besides that?
I kind of really like country music right now because they're bringing in lots of other genres. Yeah. So I can still listen to country, but listen to like country rap or country rock.
Yeah.
So that's been fun. But if I'm jamming in my car by myself, it's probably going to be something weird like rap rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Country has come a long way, I would say, since the Garth Brooks, like
the twangy
uber twang, to now it's a lot more kind of flexible and more pop friendly, I would say. I used to really hate country, and I've definitely come around over the years.
Definitely understand. But I think too there's been a lot of crossover. It does kind of lend itself to other, genres of music. So for someone who likes the balladeers and that kind of music, there's definitely that lane for them in country. So you can kind of just take country as a whole and pick a subgenre and enjoy it. Yeah,
I also like how country music is focused on storytelling a lot.
Absolutely.
I'm always amazed. I'm a pretty tough guy, but when you can have like a song in 3 minutes that almost brings you to tears, in 3 minutes. It's really incredible, but it has that kind of power sometimes with some of the stories that these songwriters are telling.
That's why I feel like sometimes they're almost like emotional manipulators. It's like it doesn't matter what mood you're in. Yeah. They're going to put some chords together and add some words to it, and somehow that is going to like elicit a specific response from you.
Yeah,
and that's kind of amazing to me.
A lot of music, that the artist does write the lyrics. Like I think in rock and rap especially, those artists are writing what they're performing. But in country, it's kind of just like an accepted thing that there's writers and then there's performers, and there is a lot of crossover, but it's not seen as like a negative thing that you're singing a song that was written by one of these people who are coming to town.
Right. Well, the other interesting part about it is a lot of these guys and ladies all live in the same area. They're all friends. So whether they're the big star this year or maybe they're just a writer this year, but they become huge stars in their own right. Like, Chris Stapleton and Luke Combs, some of the biggest names in country. Lots of people don't know are actually behind some of the other larger people who are performing the songs. So I think they all kind of have a time where they're the writers, but they're all in this close-knit group where they perform together, they travel together a lot of times on tour, and the stories that they create together may be, I'm the big star this week, but come 2 weeks, it may be you that's the big star.
Yeah, and I think when the songwriters tell their stories at this festival, there's a lot of I don't know, you feel like you're kind of getting an inside look at some of the big names, in
Absolutely.
some of the performers, because they've hung out at their houses. We're sitting around Brad Paisley's house at 2 a.m. and finally he said this crazy thing, and so we turned that into a song. Seems like a lot of the songs happen at the end of a very long night. A lot of the songwriting.
Or on the bus. A lot of it on the bus after a concert. Yeah, traveling. But I think a lot of times, too, it's, they have these shared experiences and then they decide, well, we're going to write this about this and you're going to sing this. But then, in a couple weeks, I want to try and put this out, and they'll shop it around. And I don't think they ever necessarily know that any one song is going to be a bigger hit than the other. Mm-hmm. That was another thing that I was just amazed with. The amount of stuff that they produce, the amount of songs that they write is, for some of them, literally just thousands.
Yeah.
So getting the chance to find a big star that wants to sing on it, or having these experiences writing, I know that a lot of them will go on, ranch trips together, and they'll have these retreats where they just focus on writing. So I think when you put that much talent and that amount of space, just laid back and having a good time, you're going to come up with stuff that is very singable and, means something to a lot of people.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit to the pandemic. Okay. So you used to be, like you mentioned earlier, that it's weird to not have a big mic in front of your face right now.
Yes.
It's weird to not be in the studio potentially. So you work from home. How did that come about, and what's that like now? You're broadcasting from your house to all the KIX country listeners, right?
Sometimes I'll do it in the KIX studio. I live in St. Augustine, so during the pandemic, they helped me build a studio in my closet just so that I wouldn't have to go out if, sometimes it just wasn't feasible and, lockdown. So that has definitely become one of the more interesting things, I think, is you're sitting in your closet and you got your clothes hanging here and you're talking to everyone and no one all at the same time.
Yeah. So you don't need like soundproofing because you got your clothes.
I do have soundproofing. That was honestly, I have to say, building my studio, that was one of the funnest parts, is having my dad come in and help me try to put up, the soundproofing panels on the walls. And there was a lot of spray glue that was used, and that didn't end up well. But it was just me and my dad giggling on the floor from too many fumes from the glue. But it was a great experience to have. And, my only beef in there is I got to get some more ventilation because it can be hot in there. But after you're in this little room and you're talking, and it doesn't occur to you that everyone can hear what you're saying all the time, and then you'll get out in public and forget that, oh yeah, I did talk about that, and someone will mention it, and you're like, I really thought I was just talking to the styrofoam on the wall. So getting back out into public, I guess, it's been fun, but it's a little more intimidating than I thought it would be after not being around.
The closet is the most private place and the most public place now for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So what gave you the idea to do your own show on the Songwriters? Again, Sundays 6 to 7 p.m. on KIX Country, you can hear you talk about these and hear clips of the interviews.
Yes.
What gave you the idea to do that, to make that show?
I do a lot of the production for the stations, and I was writing the promos for the Songwriter Show, and we were looking at the mass number of hits that they have, the top 25s, the top 5s, and it was just an overwhelming amount, and there's no way we could get to all of them, but some of them are such good stories and such good songs that we kind of decided, well, let's expand on that. Let's take their list of what their hits are and just play those. So everything you hear on the show during that hour is written by one of our songwriters. Mm-hmm. For the most part, they're all at least a top 25 and above. But some of these people, just one person in itself could have literally hundreds of hits.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I've been to this festival, like I said, a couple different times, and It's Your Love was my wedding song. Aww. So we're hearing It's Your Love sung by the woman who wrote it. It's a pretty cool thing. It's a very romantic moment.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't even realize that these people have a part of your life, like that it is a soundtrack to things that have happened to you, really, and finding out maybe how your personal story actually kind of matches up to what their personal story was, I think makes it just a whole different element and a different way of evolving the music for you personally.
Right. Very good. Well, Kandi, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Observations, and to the viewers. So if you want to hear Kandi's show, 6 to 7 p.m. on KIX Country, the next few Sundays, leading up to April 24th, that Sunday, and then the festival itself is April 28th to May 1st at the DSC Amphitheater. You can get tickets at palmcoastsongwritersfestival.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Come join us.